So I guess how have the roles and responsibilities within data governance teams evolved then?
Yes. So in previous iterations, we first created an executive steering group, and we usually had a very high placed executive that really believed that this was a top priority of the organization. So we had an executive steering team, and then they empowered a data governance council. There was a series of leaders across the enterprise that then enabled a data governance office or function to deliver things. And then we had data owners and data stewards across the enterprise. We
Mm.
had technical teams that were accepting of the role of data custodian. So we built this pyramid like structure that was very rigid in its design and very hierarchical. And organizations don't have the time to do that anymore. And that's one of the things that has really evolved and changed over time. As we've created these new modern data architectures, we're now taking some of the brakes off of the wheel, if you will, where we're allowing our domains to be much more autonomous in the decisions that they're making around how they want to govern their data. We're using the data governance office or the data governance organization to really implement guardrails so that, okay, this is, hey, domains, we're going to give you autonomy on what you can do, but we need you to play inside of these specific guardrails. And we will coach you on how to do that, but we're going to give you that autonomy to be able to make those decisions. And as data mesh architectures, as data fabric architectures have become the norm and are being much more pervasive in organizations, this is really the method to success. The day of old school centralized planning data governance has really fallen off the map. Nobody's interested in that anymore. There's still room for a data governance council to be in charge of policy in the organization, to really be the group that's enforcing policy, but they're doing it in ways where you're using technology to do it. So, and then our data governance office is there as a coaching function more than anything else. They're coaching data owners and data stewards how to perform their duties. They're not being heavy handed and saying, you must do these things. We're just saying, here's how you can do these things. And again, if you perform within these guardrails, you're going to be successful. So it's a much more agile type approach to it
Mhm.
instead of a pyramid type approach. And organizations are really grasping onto this concept now, and they're really enjoying sort of the light touch feel to it.
Is that due to, because agile's the boom now, isn't it? Really, is that? Do you think it's interacted with that? Obviously, that constant. We need that constant change because things are moving so quick, aren't they?
I think it's part of it. I think it's part of the paradigm, right? We went to agile because using waterfall delivery methods were just unsuccessful. It's just taking too long. And agile gave us the ability to prototype, to fail fast, and to deliver something in a much more expedient fashion. And this is a similar paradigm, right? In the old days, we used to build data governance capabilities, and it took a long time. And we would get to these different domains, and it would take forever to get there because we're building these key foundational components over time. And organizations ran out of time, patience, and money. And now we have to be much more agile in our approach. We have to be much more sensitive to delivering things quickly because organizations don't have time to wait. They want to deliver these capabilities. And if they slow down, they're going to be surpassed by their competition. And they're in no business to do that now.
Yep. No. Competition is out there, definitely, and especially, I mean, even that more so now from the startup world. You've got competition at all angles, haven't you?
Oh yeah, there's always an organization that is much more nimble that can kneecap the big guys, and because they're able to turn that speedboat around on a dime versus the big organizations that are trying to turn a battleship or an aircraft carrier around, it just takes a long time to do it. Those big organizations have to find ways to be much more nimble and have to find ways to deliver quickly, or they're going to be surpassed by those more challenging, much smaller organizations that have the ability to really change the paradigm of what's going on in their business very quickly. And they have to be able to respond to that. This is all part of this methodology that organizations have to adopt.
Cool. And then you touched on a couple of points on how it's evolved. So, do you want to give a bit bigger overview of how data governance has evolved over the last 5 years?
Yes. So over the last 5 years, we've gone from a very kind of centralized methodology of, we have a centralized group, which is going to make edicts around data governance policy and procedure. The rest of the organization is going to have to follow us. We're going to have, this very thick book of policies that everyone was going to have to conform to. And organizations found that it wasn't successful just because nobody was following the policies, and they essentially ran out of patience, time, and money to deliver this capability successfully. So now We're doing it in a much more agile fashion. We're using the tools at our disposal to be successful. We're allowing domains to be in charge of their own future, to really drive how they choose to govern their data, how they choose to enable their data, how they choose to enable their constituencies to be successful. It is obviously much more distributed in how it's being delivered, but that distribution is really the successful component behind it. And it's much more light touch. So all the heavy duty policy books seem to be finding their way out of organizations. We have minimal policies and procedures that are just enough that's required so that we keep our regulatory folks happy, we keep our oversight organizations happy, but at the same time, we're still allowing our organizations the flexibility to deliver how they see fit. And we're really coaching organizations to drive with a light touch. We're going to give people within organizations, or we're going to give our data stewardship communities the tools to be successful, just enough structure to be successful, but we're going to allow them to operate within their own domain so that they can really be the masters of what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, so yeah, interesting because it's just how things evolve is just I think it's fascinating how I guess also you got the technology is going to drive a lot of it because things are constantly well things are getting better all the time and there's always going to be that continuous development, isn't there?
I mean, there's such incredible tools out there now that allow us to examine and harness data lineage. Just imagine the ability to see how data is transformed as it comes in from the source of record all the way through to its final resting space, if you will. And you can see the exact transformations. And you can use a tool that you can hover over the different touch points and how that data is being transformed. And you can actually see the code that's transforming it. And you can say, oh, I can see why this error may be taking place, or I can see why this business
Mm,
rule may be causing us some challenges. That wasn't there in the past. So that's a real key capability. And then there's new capabilities like active metadata management. Quite often, we've built data catalogs expecting organizations to use these data catalogs over and over again. And unfortunately, people just don't have time to go visit the data catalog. So we've built this Picasso of a data catalog with this. All the data schemas are out there and all of our business glossaries are defined and nobody uses it. And we start asking our questions as to why not. That's because we're not delivering the metadata to where the users are actually located. Now, if we pass that metadata on these different data assets to a Power BI report or a Tableau report, all of a sudden it's right there in their face and they can make sure that they're using the right data assets at the right time for the right purpose. So now we've used these tools to deliver active metadata capabilities to our data consumers. And they're much more now, they're much more enabled and they're much more excited about using these tools. And if you ask someone now, I need you to go to the catalog and investigate these data assets, they're probably not going to do it because they didn't have the time or they don't have the time to do it.
yeah. So I mean, it's all about efficiency nowadays, isn't it? I think people want to like click a finger sort of thing.
Organizations are, there's no bloat in any organizations these days. They have the minimal amount of workforce to be
Mm,
successful. And it's all about efficiency. We all don't have the time to perform our job duties. We have to do as much as we can in the time we have to do it. And the efficiency is paramount. If we're unable to deliver, if I tell a data steward that your job is going to take 20 hours per week, 30 hours per week, there's no chance that they're going to do it successfully. But if I could tell a data steward that if you can invest 4 or 5 hours per week on your data stewardship tasks, and we're going to give you the tools to make you successful, now they're interested in having that conversation with you. And if you're interested in enabling your data consumers, your constituencies, just using that amount of time per week, now organizations are willing to listen.
yeah. No, I think I was just yeah. I guess it's that improvement bit is more makes your job more interesting as well, doesn't it? Because you're solving a problem. It's good for your mind. If you get set in your ways, like if it's like Groundhog Day every day, your day is going to feel like a week, and it's just not going to interest you, is it? But if you're on that constant learning path, that's the buzz, isn't it?
I think it's very interesting. I worked with a client once they were a very sophisticated energy delivery company, but they had contractors out in the field that were measuring the capabilities of their pipelines, the capabilities of their delivery mechanisms. And the data that they were consuming from these contractors that were outside of the organization that were performing these inspections was notoriously flawed. And
Mm,
it was costing this organization hours and hours of time rectifying the data, researching why there were complications, researching why these inspections were, the data was all over the place and it wasn't making any sense. And we actually came up with a mechanism to understand that here's how much time it would take you for a high impact error or a medium impact error or a low impact error. And we actually created, and then we took the number of errors that were being discovered and we multiplied that by the labor rate to actually fix the error and research and fix the error and deal with it. And all of a sudden, it became very apparent to the organization this was costing them millions and millions of dollars in inefficiencies and in potential risk that they would be reporting information that was going to be erroneous. And that was unacceptable to them. Not to mention the fact that these people that were performing the analysis on all this bogus data, they're spending so much time on it that was literally driving them crazy. They didn't have time to do their jobs effectively. So they
Yeah,
were raising their hands, standing up, and they couldn't accept the challenge fast enough to be data stewards. They loved it. They were completely on board from the beginning. And the best part about it was because we were able to scorecard out our data quality success. Okay. So in the first time we did it, we found hundreds or millions or thousands of data quality errors. And the organization was shocked, just completely overwhelmed by this. But over time, we showed the improvement because of the things that we were doing. We found our root causes. We were fixing things before they actually got into our ecosystem. We were improving every single day. And because of that, now we were seeing the real tremendous impact on why we were doing this. And every day you see that improvement, every day you're able to chart that improvement to deliver that capability to show that business value, then organizations are incredibly interested in doing it. What
yeah,
to
it's that
me,
momentum as well.
yes, and to me,
Yeah,
one of the most interesting books I've ever read on really how to improve yourself is a book called Atomic Habits by a guy named James Clear. And he
mm,
talked about how if you just improve 1% per day, the improvement is incredible. And talks about how the British cycling teams took this in as their philosophy, and then they became incredibly successful on the cycling track or in the Tour de France and in those areas. And I coach organizations to do the same thing. You're not going to improve your data quality by 100% in less than a month, but if you improve your data quality 1% per day, and you're continuing to keep your nose to the grindstone and continuing to improve every day, finding new ways to improve and showing your improvement over time, making sure you're delivering that value. Now organizations see exactly why we're doing it and they're beginning to enjoy the benefits behind it.
yeah. No, I've read that book as well, and it's nice. It's discipline and consistency is the main thing, isn't it? If you keep doing the same thing every day, or like looking to improve every day, you obviously it's not going to be like A. You're not going to get A to B. It's going to be a challenge. It's like with anything in life. But if you keep constantly doing it, constantly striving to achieve, you're going to obviously come across hurdles, but you're going to get the answer if you keep going. Really, in my opinion, because you're going to you're going to learn, aren't you? You're going to learn. You're going to. I don't like saying fail because if you constant, you should just learn, isn't it? You learn to get there.
But you've made the biggest point as to why organizations have failed with data governance because they've taken their eye off the ball and they stopped trying to improve every day. They've deprioritized it. They're not watching it on a daily basis. Nobody's in charge of it. And essentially the effort spins out of control and eventually becomes meaningless. And all of a sudden, all those problems that they were fixing over time, that improvement they were gaining has been completely lost. And now they're in a crisis situation. So now they have to get back into it. And it's going to cost them a lot more money. It's going to require a lot more effort to get their data under control and properly managed because they've allowed themselves to take their eye off of the ball at that point. So you have to understand that this is a journey, that it is a journey it's going to continue over time. And you may never reach the point where you're finished. You may never reach the point where you're stopping doing this because there will be code changes that will break data pipelines and errors will exist. And you're going to have to find
Yeah,
ways to solve those problems. New technologies are going to be introduced, new systems are going to be deployed, and you're going to fight the data quality journey. You're going to have to fight the metadata management journey every single day. And if you drop the ball and you deprioritize data governance, you're going to be in a position where you're going to feel very exposed. And you want to make sure that you're never in that position because that's where bad things begin to happen. So you have to constantly remind yourself that you're constantly doing this. It's a culture change. It's not a capitalized project that you're just going to say, okay, we're finished, we're done, we shake hands, we high five, and then we move on. It doesn't. It's not that simple.
yeah. Well, it's not an end date, is there? Because you keep getting new
No.
data, so there's no
Yeah.
end date. You've got to keep going. Like
You have
Like
to
even I've
do.
said to before, even if you deliver one project, something new comes out. It's like that's like you said, it's data's a journey, like it's a never-ending journey because it's it's constant evolution.
It is a constant evolution. We're constantly introducing new tools, new
Yeah,
software, new code into production within organizations. And sometimes that code breaks. Sometimes it's not
yeah,
perfect. And we have to be there to make sure that we're stopping these bad things from happening before they become a problem. And you never stop doing it. You have to constantly improve. And if you feel like, okay, I've reached the part, I've reached the mountaintop and I've reached that point of success, you still have to maintain it. You still have to make sure that you're still driving those things so that you're always going to be at that level of excellence. You never want to decrease the wins. You never want to get back the wins that you've gained by performing all the hard work that you've done up to that point.